The cafe was warm, crowded, and loud, but the silence between them felt heavier than the clatter of cups and the low hum of conversations. In a place where everyone seemed to belong to someone, a single dad sat alone at a small wooden table, his shoulders tense, his eyes tired, his life quietly unraveling. Then a poor woman stood before him, clutching her worn bag, asking a question so simple it barely seemed capable of changing anything. Yet that one moment, that single request to share a table, would uncover a truth so powerful that it would shake his past, his pain, and his understanding of what family really meant. Before the story continues, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel if you still believe that compassion and second chances can change lives. The man had not planned to stay long. He rarely did. Cafes were just temporary shelters for him, places where he could sit without being judged, where his tired face blended into the background of busy lives. As a single father, his days were spent juggling work that barely paid the bills, school meetings he could hardly attend, and nights filled with worry about rent, groceries, and a future he could not clearly see. He was strong on the outside, built by years of physical labor, but inside he carried the quiet exhaustion of someone who had lost too much and kept going anyway. The empty chair across from him reminded him of absence. Of a life that once felt complete. His wife had died years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving him alone with a young child and a mountain of responsibilities he was never prepared for. Since then, every decision felt heavier, every mistake more costly. He came to the cafe not for comfort, but because it was cheaper than going home to a silent apartment too early, cheaper than confronting memories that waited for him in the dim light of evening. That was when he noticed her. She stood awkwardly near the table, clearly unsure whether she should ask or walk away. Her clothes were clean but worn, her posture cautious, as if the world had taught her too many lessons about rejection. She did not look desperate, just tired in a way that suggested life had never been gentle with her. The cafe was full, and empty seats were rare. When she gestured toward the empty chair, there was humility in her eyes, the kind that comes from asking for permission too many times. He hesitated, not out of cruelty, but habit. Life had trained him to guard his space, his emotions, his limited peace. Still, something in her presence felt familiar. Maybe it was the quiet dignity she carried, or the way she avoided eye contact as if she did not want to impose. He nodded, and she sat down carefully, as though afraid she might be asked to leave. They sat in silence at first. Around them, people laughed, typed on laptops, and scrolled through phones. The cafe smelled of coffee and fresh bread, but under it all was the unspoken weight both of them carried. He noticed how she wrapped her hands around her cup, savoring the warmth, as if it were more than just a drink. He noticed how she glanced at the menu without ordering anything else, calculating every coin in her mind. Over time, the silence softened. Not broken by words, but by a shared understanding. Two strangers occupying the same small island of calm in a noisy world. He began to sense that she was not simply poor in money, but in safety, in certainty. Her eyes held stories, and though she never spoke them aloud, they seemed to echo against his own unspoken pain. As minutes passed, he found himself studying her more closely. There was something strangely familiar about her features. Not enough to recognize her, but enough to stir a vague discomfort in his chest. He dismissed it as fatigue. Life had a way of playing tricks on tired minds. The woman eventually stood to leave, offering a small nod of gratitude before stepping away. The moment passed, or so it seemed. Yet as she moved toward the counter, something fell from her bag and slid across the floor, stopping near his foot. He picked it up without thinking. It was an old photograph, creased and faded from being handled too often. The image stopped him cold. In the photograph was a much younger version of himself, smiling in a way he barely remembered how to do. Beside him stood a woman he had not seen in decades, holding a baby wrapped in a soft blanket. His breath caught. The cafe noise faded. The room tilted. The woman from the table turned back, panic flashing across her face when she saw the photograph in his hand. Her steps slowed, then stopped. Her expression shifted from fear to resignation, as though she had known this moment might come someday. His mind raced. The woman in the photograph was not his late wife. She was someone from a past he had buried deep, from a time when he was younger, reckless, and unaware of the consequences of his choices. A relationship that had ended abruptly, leaving questions unanswered and wounds unhealed. He had been told she left town. He had believed it because believing was easier than searching. Now she stood before him, older, poorer, but undeniably the same woman. Memories flooded back with painful clarity. A brief love, intense and fragile. Promises made too easily. A separation forced by fear, family pressure, and his own immaturity. He had never known she was pregnant. Or perhaps he had been too afraid to ask the right questions. The realization hit him with devastating force. The child in the photograph was his. Everything he thought he understood about his life cracked open. The years of struggle as a single father. The guilt of not being enough. The loneliness. All of it collided with the knowledge that somewhere along the way, another life had grown without him, shaped by hardship he never helped carry. The woman did not cry. She did not accuse. Her face reflected acceptance, as if she had long since made peace with a reality that had given her no choice. She had raised the child alone, working whatever jobs she could find, moving from place to place, surviving rather than living. She had never come looking for him, not out of pride, but because she believed he had chosen a different life, one without them. The cafe suddenly felt too small for the weight of what had been uncovered. Yet within that heaviness, something else stirred. A strange sense of clarity. For years, he had wondered why life kept testing him, why responsibility had come to him so fiercely. Now he wondered if life had been preparing him, teaching him how to endure, how to show up, how to be a father even when it hurt. They sat again, not as strangers this time, but as two people bound by a past neither had fully understood. The conversation was quiet, careful, filled with pauses heavy with emotion. She spoke of the child, now grown, trying to find direction in a world that had never offered much guidance. He listened, every word carving itself into his heart. For the first time in years, he felt something other than survival. He felt purpose. The days that followed changed him. He reached out. He listened. He tried, awkwardly and imperfectly, to bridge the distance time had created. He did not try to erase the past, knowing it could not be undone. Instead, he focused on what remained possible. Support. Presence. Accountability. The woman did not ask for money. She did not ask for forgiveness. What she needed was acknowledgement. What he needed was a chance to become the man he should have been all along. Slowly, trust grew. Not dramatically, not overnight, but in small moments. Shared meals. Long walks. Stories exchanged without blame. The child, cautious at first, watched him with skepticism, then curiosity. A relationship began to form, not defined by blood alone, but by effort. For a man who had once believed his life was already written, this unexpected chapter felt both terrifying and miraculous. He realized that family was not only about who stayed from the beginning, but who chose to show up when the truth finally arrived. As months passed, the cafe where it all began became a symbol. A reminder that kindness, even in its simplest form, could unlock doors we never knew existed. That sharing a table could mean sharing a life. And now, before this story reaches its end, leave a comment below and share what this moment meant to you. A single word, a thought, or a prayer can carry more power than you think. In the end, he no longer sat alone. Not just at cafe tables, but in life. The weight on his shoulders felt lighter, not because his struggles had disappeared, but because they were no longer carried in isolation. The woman who once asked for nothing more than a place to sit had given him something priceless, the truth, and with it, a second chance at being whole. If this story touched your heart, moved your spirit, or reminded you of the quiet power of compassion, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and engage with this channel. Your support helps stories like this reach others who may be waiting for their own moment of unexpected grace.